Ngozi, a 17-year-old girl living in the small town of Eziowelle, feels trapped. She often gazes at the sky, imagining a life beyond the dusty roads and crowded markets. Her family's expectations weigh heavily on her shoulders. They want her to follow the traditional path, but Ngozi dreams of leaving the town, attending a big university in Lagos, and finding freedom. Every night she writes in her journal about the life she envisions. She has big dreams of becoming a writer, but her parents don't understand. Her father, Chukwuma, wants her to study law, while her mother, Chinwe, is more concerned with marrying her off to a respectable man. Life at home is tense. Ngozi's rebellious nature often leads to arguments with her mother. Chinwe, a strict woman, believes in discipline and following tradition, while Ngozi constantly questions everything. This morning, the fight is over Ngozi's choice of friends. Her mother disapproves of Ada, Ngozi's best friend, who she thinks is a bad influence. Ngozi storms out of the house, frustration bubbling inside her. She loves her family, but the constant clashes make her feel suffocated. She wonders if she'll ever break free from the expectations placed on her. But for now, her school and friends are her escape. At St. Andrew's Secondary School, Ngozi finds solace. It's the only place where she feels like herself. Her best friend Ada is always there to cheer her up. Ada, unlike Ngozi, is carefree and unconcerned about the future. Together, they laugh, gossip, and make plans to leave Eziowelle behind. Ngozi's favorite subject is English literature, and her teacher, Miss Funke, notices her talent. Miss Funke encourages Ngozi to pursue writing, which only deepens her desire to escape. She shares this with Ada, who supports her dreams, though she has no clear path of her own. At home, things are getting worse. Ngozi's relationship with her mother continues to fray. Chinwe, who works as a seamstress, believes in hard work and following tradition. She criticizes Ngozi for dreaming too big, constantly reminding her that a girl's place is in the home. Ngozi's father, Chukwuma, is more understanding but distant. He is a government worker who spends most of his time at the office. While he believes Ngozi is capable of greatness, he is also practical. He advises her to follow a career that guarantees success, like law or medicine, ignoring her desire for a creative path. Ngozi is also dealing with the confusing emotions of first love. There's a boy at school, Uchenna, who she has a crush on. He's smart, handsome, and popular, and his presence always makes her heart race. Uchenna, however, seems oblivious to her feelings. Ada teases Ngozi about her crush, and one day they dare each other to speak to him. Ngozi's nerves almost get the better of her, but she finally manages to strike up a conversation. To her surprise, Uchenna is kind and charming, though their interaction is brief. The encounter leaves Ngozi daydreaming about him all day. As the final year of school approaches, the pressure mounts. Ngozi's parents are adamant that she studies law. They have already begun talking to relatives in Lagos about helping her find a place at a prestigious university. Ngozi, however, dreams of studying literature and escaping the small-town mentality that surrounds her. Her frustration grows, and she begins to rebel more openly. She stays out late with Ada, skips family dinners, and starts lying to her parents about her whereabouts. The tension at home reaches new heights, but Ngozi refuses to bend. One evening, after another argument with her mother, Ngozi sneaks out to attend a party with Ada. The party is in a neighboring village, and they travel by bus, feeling the thrill of independence. At the party, Ngozi feels free for the first time, surrounded by new people and loud music. But the night takes a turn when the police raid the party, suspecting illegal activities. Ngozi and Ada manage to escape, but the close call shakes Ngozi. She realizes the risks of her rebellion, but at the same time, it ignites a stronger desire to leave her restrictive life behind. Back at school, Uchenna starts paying more attention to Ngozi. They begin talking more often, sharing laughs and stories about their families and dreams. Ngozi is thrilled that Uchenna is noticing her, and they start spending more time together. Uchenna confides in Ngozi that he too feels trapped by his parents' expectations. They bond over their shared frustrations, and Ngozi feels a growing connection with him. But as their friendship deepens, so do her feelings, leaving her unsure of where things are headed. Ngozi secretly applies to a university in Lagos that specializes in creative writing. She doesn't tell her parents, knowing they would disapprove, but she holds on to the hope that if she is accepted, she might be able to convince them to let her go. Ada is supportive, but even she isn't sure how Ngozi will manage to break free from her family's plans. Nevertheless, Ngozi remains determined. She dreams of the day she can leave Eziowelle and live the life she has always imagined. One day, Ngozi's secret is revealed when a letter from the university arrives at her home. Her mother finds it before she does and confronts her angrily. "What is this nonsense?" Chinwe shouts, waving the letter in Ngozi's face. "You want to run away to Lagos to study stories? How will that feed you?" Ngozi's heart sinks as her parents argue about her future. Her father, though disappointed, tries to mediate, but Ngozi's mother is furious. That night, Ngozi felt more alone than ever. She wonders if she will ever be able to follow her dreams. Chinwe gives Ngozi an ultimatum. Either she applies to study law or she will no longer support her. Ngozi feels trapped. She loves her family, but the thought of giving up her dreams terrifies her. She turns to Uchenna for advice, and he listens patiently, offering his support. Uchenna tells her that sometimes the hardest battles are fought with the people closest to us. But in the end, he says, you have to live your life for yourself. His words stay with Ngozi, even as she grapples with the pressure from her family. As the final year of school begins, Ngozi is more determined than ever to leave Eziowelle and pursue her dreams. But the challenges keep mounting. Her relationship with her mother continues to deteriorate, and her father remains distant, torn between his wife's wishes and Ngozi's desires. At school, Ngozi throws herself into her studies, knowing that if she excels, she might have a better chance of convincing her parents to let her study literature. Her friendship with Uchenna also deepens, though she is careful not to let it distract her from her goals. Determined to prove her family wrong, Ngozi comes up with a plan. She decides to save money on her own, hoping that by the time school ends, she will have enough to support herself in Lagos. She secretly takes on small jobs, helping her neighbors with chores and selling some of her weavings in the market. It's hard work, but Ngozi feels empowered. She hides her earnings in an old book beneath her bed, and each day she feels a little closer to her dream. However, she knows this plan can only work if she keeps it a secret from her parents. As Ngozi becomes more involved in her secret plan, her relationship with Uchenna also deepens. One evening, after a long day at school, Uchenna confesses his feelings for her. "Ngozi, you're different from everyone else," he says softly. "I've never met anyone so determined to follow their dreams." Ngozi's heart races. She has always had feelings for Uchenna, but she never imagined he felt the same way. For the first time in a long while, she feels a glimmer of happiness. However, their budding romance brings new challenges. Ngozi is still focused on leaving Eziowelle, and she worries that a relationship could complicate things. As graduation day approaches, the pressure on Ngozi intensifies. Her parents insist that she apply to study law, and they have already arranged meetings with relatives in Lagos who can help her. Ngozi, however, remains resolute in her dream of pursuing literature. The tension at home becomes unbearable, with arguments erupting almost daily. Chinwe becomes more controlling, checking in on Ngozi's whereabouts and discouraging her from spending time with Ada or Uchenna. Ngozi feels suffocated, trapped in a life she no longer recognizes. Ngozi decides that the only way to secure her future is to leave home before graduation. She plans her escape carefully, gathering enough money to travel to Lagos and find a place to stay. She confides in Ada, who promises to help her get to the bus station when the time comes. But there's one person she hasn't told, Uchenna. She fears that telling him will complicate her decision, but at the same time, she can't bear the thought of leaving without saying goodbye. The night before Ngozi plans to leave, she meets Uchenna by the river. As the sun sets behind the hills, she struggles to find the words to explain her decision. "I'm leaving tomorrow," she finally says, her voice trembling. "I can't stay here anymore." Uchenna's face falls, but he doesn't try to stop her. Instead, he nods, understanding the depth of her need to escape. "I'll miss you," he says softly, "but I know you have to do this." Ngozi's heart aches as she says her final goodbye. She knows she's making the right choice, but leaving Uchenna behind feels like losing a part of herself. The following morning, before the first light of dawn, Ngozi quietly packs her things. She leaves a note for her parents, explaining that she needs to follow her dreams and that she hopes they will one day understand. With Ada's help, she sneaks out of the house and heads to the bus station. As Ngozi boards the bus to Lagos, her heart races with a mixture of fear and excitement. She has no idea what the future holds, but she knows this is the first step toward the life she has always wanted. When Ngozi arrives in Lagos, she is overwhelmed by the chaos of the city. The streets are packed with people, the air is thick with noise, and the buildings tower above her. For a moment she feels lost, unsure of where to go or how to begin. But then she remembers why she's here. She pulls out the address of a hostel that Ada's cousin recommended and makes her way through the crowded streets. The journey is exhausting, but when Ngozi finally reaches the hostel, she feels a sense of accomplishment. She made it. Settling into life in Lagos is harder than Ngozi anticipated. The city is fast-paced, and she struggles to adjust to the constant noise and chaos. She spends her days looking for work, hoping to save enough money to enroll in the university she dreams of attending. But jobs are scarce, and the little money Ngozi had saved quickly runs out. She finds herself working odd jobs in the market, barely making enough to cover her rent. Despite the difficulties, Ngozi refuses to give up. She knows that this is just the beginning, and she is determined to succeed. Weeks pass, and Ngozi starts to receive letters from her family. At first, the letters are filled with anger and disappointment. Her mother writes about how Ngozi has disrespected the family, while her father expresses his sadness at her decision to leave. But slowly, the tone of the letters begins to change. Her father writes that they miss her and that they are beginning to understand why she left. Ngozi reads each letter with a heavy heart, feeling the pull of home, but she knows she cannot return. Not yet. One day, while working at the market, Ngozi meets an older woman named Mrs. Onu, who runs a small publishing company. Mrs. Onu notices Ngozi's hard work and curiosity and offers her a job as an assistant at her office. Though the pay is modest, the job offers Ngozi a chance to be close to the world of books and writing. Excited by the opportunity, Ngozi accepts. She spends her days organizing manuscripts, proofreading, and learning the ins and outs of the publishing world. It's not the big break she dreamed of, but it's a step in the right direction. As the weeks go by, Mrs. Onu becomes a mentor to Ngozi. She teaches her about the importance of storytelling and the power of words. Ngozi soaks up every lesson, eager to improve her writing skills and make a name for herself in the literary world. One evening, after work, Mrs. Onu invites Ngozi to her home for dinner. Over a meal of jollof rice and grilled fish, they talk about life, dreams, and the challenges of being a woman in a male-dominated world. Mrs. Onu encourages Ngozi to keep pushing forward, no matter how difficult the road ahead may seem. Months pass, and Ngozi receives a surprise letter from Uchenna. He writes about how much he misses her and how he has been thinking about their last conversation by the river. He tells her that he too has been working toward his dreams, and he hopes to one day pursue music professionally. Ngozi's heart swells as she reads the letter. She realizes how much she misses Uchenna, but she also knows that her path is different now. She writes back, encouraging him to follow his passion and reassuring him that she is doing the same. After months of hard work at the publishing company, Ngozi finally gets her chance. Mrs. Onu offers her the opportunity to write a short story for one of their publications. Ngozi is thrilled, but also nervous. This is her chance to prove herself, and she doesn't want to let Mrs. Onu down. She spends days working on the story, pouring her heart into every word. When she finally submits it, she feels a mixture of excitement and fear. It's the first time she has shared her writing with the world, and she can only hope that it will be well received. A few weeks later, Ngozi's story is published, and the response is overwhelmingly positive. Readers praise her unique voice and storytelling ability, and Mrs. Onu is proud of her accomplishment. For the first time, Ngozi feels like she is on the right path. The success of her story gives her a renewed sense of confidence. She begins working on new pieces, hoping to one day publish a full-length novel. The dream that once seemed so far away now feels within reach. Just as Ngozi begins to settle into her new life, she receives an unexpected visit from her father, Chukwuma. He arrives in Lagos unannounced, and when she sees him standing at her door, her heart sinks. She hasn't seen her parents since she left Eziowelle, and she has no idea what to expect. Chukwuma's expression is stern, but there's a softness in his eyes that Ngozi hadn't noticed before. They sit down to talk, and Chukwuma surprises her by admitting that he and her mother miss her terribly. "We didn't understand your dreams," he says quietly, "but your mother and I have been wrong. We only want what's best for you." The conversation with her father stirs up many emotions for Ngozi. She's happy to hear that her parents are starting to understand her choices, but she's not ready to return home just yet. Chukwuma spends a few days in Lagos, visiting Ngozi's workplace and meeting Mrs. Onu. He sees firsthand how hard his daughter has been working and how much she has achieved on her own. Before Chukwuma leaves, he hugs Ngozi tightly. "Take your time, my daughter," he says. "When you are ready, come back home. We will welcome you." His words bring Ngozi some peace, but she still feels the pressure of her family's expectations weighing on her. As Ngozi's writing career begins to gain momentum, she starts to dream bigger. She wants to write a novel that tells the story of her journey, the struggles of balancing tradition and ambition, and the importance of finding one's true path. The idea excites her, but also terrifies her. Writing a novel is a much larger task than she has ever taken on before. Mrs. Onu encourages Ngozi to pursue the idea. "You have a story to tell, and the world needs to hear it," she says. Ngozi takes her mentor's advice to heart and begins outlining the plot of her novel, knowing that it will take time, patience, and resilience to bring it to life. Meanwhile, Uchenna faces his own struggles. His parents continue to pressure him to study medicine, but his heart is still in music. He writes to Ngozi about the internal conflict he feels, torn between his family's wishes and his own dreams. In her reply, Ngozi encourages him to follow his passion, just as she has done. "You can't live your life for someone else," she writes. "Your music is a part of who you are." Uchenna takes her words to heart. After much thought, he decided to pursue music full-time. He begins performing at local events, sharing his songs with the world. Though his path is not easy, he finds joy in following his heart. Writing her novel proves to be more difficult than Ngozi expected. She often feels overwhelmed by the magnitude of the project, unsure if she can actually pull it off. There are days when the words flow easily, and others when she stares at a blank page for hours, frustrated and doubting herself. But each time she feels like giving up, she reminds herself of why she started this journey in the first place. She wants to tell her story, to inspire others who feel trapped by expectations, and to show them that it's possible to fight for their dreams. With renewed determination, Ngozi pushes forward. One evening, while attending a literary event in Lagos, Ngozi runs into someone she never expected to see again, Ada. It has been months since they last spoke, and Ngozi is shocked to see her friend in the city. Ada, always full of surprises, reveals that she has been working at a fashion house in Lagos, designing clothes. The two friends catch up over dinner, sharing stories of their adventures in the city. Ada is proud of Ngozi's accomplishments, and they reminisce about their days in Eziowelle. For the first time in a long while, Ngozi feels a sense of home, not in the place she left, but in the friendship that has endured despite the distance. Life in Lagos continues to be both exhilarating and exhausting. Ngozi is constantly balancing her job at the publishing house with her writing, and the city's fast pace leaves little room for rest. At times, she feels overwhelmed by the demands of her new life. The noise, the crowds, and the constant hustle wear her down, but she reminds herself that this is the life she chose. Despite the challenges, Ngozi feels more alive than ever. She has found her purpose and is working toward her dreams, and that above all else keeps her moving forward. One day, Ngozi receives an invitation to speak at a local writers' workshop. The invitation is both exciting and nerve-wracking. This will be the first time she is asked to speak publicly about her writing journey. Mrs. Onu encourages her to accept the invitation, reminding her that she has an important story to share. Ngozi agrees, but the fear of standing in front of an audience lingers. She knows that this workshop will be an opportunity to inspire others, just as she was inspired by Mrs. Onu, but she also feels the weight of expectation. The day of the workshop arrives, and Ngozi is filled with a mix of excitement and anxiety. She stands in front of a small crowd of aspiring writers, sharing her story of leaving home, following her dreams, and fighting against the expectations placed on her. As she speaks, she sees nods of understanding in the audience, and it gives her the confidence to continue. After the workshop, several young writers approach her, thanking her for her words of encouragement. For the first time, Ngozi realizes the impact her story can have on others. She leaves the event feeling proud and inspired to continue her journey. Not long after the workshop, Ngozi receives another letter from her mother, Chinwe. This time, the letter is different. Chinwe writes with a softer tone, expressing her regrets about how she handled things when Ngozi left home. She apologizes for the harsh words and admits that she didn't understand Ngozi's dreams. Ngozi is moved by the letter. It's the first time her mother has shown any sign of acceptance, and it gives Ngozi hope that one day their relationship can heal. She writes back, thanking her mother for her honesty and expressing her own love and respect for her family. After months of hard work, Ngozi finally completes the first draft of her novel. It's a moment of triumph, but also one filled with uncertainty. She knows that there is still a long way to go before the novel is ready for publication, but finishing the draft feels like a huge accomplishment. She shares the manuscript with Mrs. Onu, who agrees to read it and offer feedback. Ngozi nervously waits for her mentor's response, hoping that the story she has poured her heart into will resonate with others. When Mrs. Onu finally reads the manuscript, she is full of praise for Ngozi's storytelling, but she also offers constructive criticism. "You have a strong voice, Ngozi," she says, "but there are parts of the story that need more depth. Don't be afraid to dig deeper into the emotions and the conflicts." Ngozi takes the feedback to heart. She knows that writing a novel is a process, and she is willing to put in the work to make it the best it can be. With Mrs. Onu's guidance, she begins revising the manuscript, determined to create a story that will touch the hearts of readers. One evening, Ngozi receives a phone call from Uchenna. He's in Lagos for a performance and invites her to attend. Ngozi hasn't seen him in months, and the thought of reconnecting fills her with both excitement and nervousness. She attends the performance, watching as Uchenna takes the stage with confidence and passion. His music is beautiful, and as she listens, she realizes how much they have both grown since their days in Eziowelle. After the show, they sit and talk, catching up on their lives. The connection between them is still strong, but Ngozi knows that their paths have diverged. As Ngozi's novel nears completion, she is faced with a difficult decision. She has been offered a full-time position at the publishing house, which would give her more stability, but less time to focus on her writing. Mrs. Onu encourages her to consider the opportunity carefully, reminding her that both paths have their own challenges. Ngozi spends days weighing her options. She knows that working at the publishing house would provide financial security, but she worries that it would take her away from her true passion. In the end, she decides to continue working part-time, allowing herself the freedom to pursue her writing full-time. With her decision made, Ngozi feels a renewed sense of focus on her novel. But as she delves deeper into the revision process, the tension in her life grows. Balancing her part-time job with her writing and personal life becomes increasingly difficult, and she begins to feel overwhelmed. The pressure starts to affect her relationship with Uchenna, who is now performing regularly in Lagos. They find themselves drifting apart, unable to spend as much time together as they once did. Ngozi struggles with the realization that their lives are heading in different directions. Despite the challenges, Ngozi continues to push forward with her novel. She spends late nights revising and rewriting, determined to create something truly special. Her perseverance pays off when she receives a call from a literary agent who has heard about her work from Mrs. Onu. The agent is interested in representing Ngozi and helping her get her novel published. Ngozi is thrilled by the opportunity, but she also knows that this is just the beginning. The road ahead is still long, and there will be more challenges to face. But for the first time, she feels like her dreams are within reach. As Ngozi's career begins to take off, her relationship with Uchenna becomes more strained. Their once strong connection is now weakened by the distance between their lives. Uchenna is focused on his music, traveling frequently for performances, while Ngozi is consumed by her writing and the demands of her growing career. They both try to make the relationship work, but the reality of their different paths becomes harder to ignore. One evening, after a difficult conversation, they both come to the painful realization that it may be time to part ways. Saying goodbye to Uchenna is one of the hardest things Ngozi has ever done. They meet one last time by the river, where they once shared their dreams. The conversation is bittersweet, filled with memories of their journey together, but also the understanding that they are no longer the same people they were when they first met. As they say their final goodbyes, Ngozi feels a deep sadness, but also a sense of closure. She knows that they will always care for each other, but their futures are no longer aligned. With Uchenna now a part of her past, Ngozi throws herself fully into her writing. Her novel is nearly complete, and she is excited about the prospect of seeing it published. The literary agent she has been working with is optimistic, and they begin submitting the manuscript to publishers. Ngozi feels a sense of accomplishment that she has never felt before. After years of hard work, sacrifice, and determination, she is finally on the brink of achieving her dream. But she also knows that success doesn't come without challenges, and she remains prepared for whatever comes next. One afternoon, while working at the publishing house, Ngozi receives an email that changes everything. a major publishing company has offered to publish her novel. The offer is everything she has been working toward, and she can hardly believe that her dream is finally coming true. She immediately shares the news with Mrs. Onu, who beams with pride. "I knew you had it in you," Mrs. Onu says. "This is just the beginning, Ngozi. You're going to do great things." To celebrate the publication offer, Ngozi invites Ada, Mrs. Onu, and a few close friends to a small gathering. It's a moment of pure joy and reflection as Ngozi looks back on the journey that brought her here. Ada teases her, saying, "I always knew you'd make it. You were never meant for that small town life." But for Ngozi, the moment is bittersweet. While she's proud of her accomplishments, she can't help but think of Uchenna and her family back in Eziowelle. She wonders if they would be proud of her too, and whether her dreams have come at the cost of losing people she loves. After months of focusing on her career, Ngozi decides to visit her family in Eziowelle. She hasn't returned since she left for Lagos, and she's nervous about how her parents will react to seeing her again. But the thought of reconnecting with her roots fills her with anticipation. When she arrives in the village, the familiar sights and sounds stir up a wave of nostalgia. As she walks through the streets, she is greeted by old neighbors and friends, all curious to hear about her life in Lagos. But it's the reunion with her parents that she both fears and looks forward to the most. When Ngozi walks into her family's home, her heart pounds in her chest. Her mother, Chinwe, is sitting by the fire, mending clothes, while her father, Chukwuma, reads a newspaper. The moment they see her, there is a pause, a silence filled with unspoken words. Then, without hesitation, her mother rushes to embrace her. Tears fill Chinwe's eyes as she holds her daughter close. "We've missed you so much," she whispers. Ngozi is overwhelmed by the warmth of the reunion. Her father joins them, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You've made us proud," he says softly, and for the first time, Ngozi feels truly at peace with her decision to leave. Over the next few days, Ngozi spends time with her family, catching up on all that she missed while she was away. Her parents, once skeptical of her dreams, now express their pride in her accomplishments. "We didn't understand your dreams at first," her mother admits, "but we see now that you were right to follow your heart." Ngozi feels a sense of closure, knowing that her family has finally accepted her choices. The weight of their disapproval has lifted, and she can now focus fully on her future without the burden of guilt. As Ngozi prepares for the release of her novel, she reflects on all the people who helped her along the way: her parents, Ada, Mrs. Onu, and even Uchenna. She realizes that while her journey has been difficult, she was never truly alone. Each person played a role in shaping her into the woman she is today. Ngozi decides to dedicate her novel to all the people who believed in her, and even those who doubted her, for they all contributed to her success in some way. As the release date approaches, she feels a mix of excitement and nervousness, knowing that the world is about to read her story. The day of the book launch finally arrives, and Ngozi is overwhelmed by the support she receives. The event is held at a small bookstore in Lagos, and the room is filled with people, friends, family, and even strangers who have heard about her journey. Ngozi gives a short speech, thanking everyone who helped her along the way. As she signs copies of her novel, she feels a deep sense of gratitude and accomplishment. This is the moment she has been working toward for so long, and it is even more fulfilling than she imagined. As Ngozi greets her supporters at the book launch, she notices someone standing at the back of the room, Uchenna. Her heart skips a beat as their eyes meet. She wasn't expecting him to come, but seeing him there fills her with a sense of closure. After the event, they talk briefly, catching up on each other's lives. Uchenna tells her that he has been doing well with his music and that he's happy for her success. "You've come so far, Ngozi," he says, smiling warmly. "I always knew you would." With her novel published and her relationships mended, Ngozi feels like she is entering a new chapter in her life. She has achieved the dream she fought so hard for, but she knows that this is just the beginning. There are more stories to tell, more challenges to face, and more lessons to learn. She returns to her small apartment in Lagos, feeling a sense of peace and fulfillment. The journey has been long and difficult, but it has been worth every struggle. Ngozi knows that she will continue to fight for her destiny, no matter where life takes her next. As Ngozi's novel gains popularity, she begins to receive letters from readers across Nigeria. Many of them are young women, inspired by her story and her journey. They share their own struggles with balancing family expectations and personal dreams, and they thank Ngozi for giving them the courage to fight for their own destinies. Ngozi is moved by the impact her story is having on others. She realizes that her fight was never just for herself. It was for all the people who feel trapped by circumstances and afraid to chase their dreams. Her success has created a ripple effect, encouraging others to pursue their own paths. With her first novel now published, Ngozi begins to think about what's next. She has ideas for new stories, and she's eager to start writing again. But this time, she feels more confident and more sure of herself and her abilities. She no longer doubts her worth as a writer. She knows that her voice matters. As she sits down to begin outlining her next book, Ngozi reflects on how far she has come. The girl who once felt trapped in a small town is now a successful author, living her dream in Lagos. The journey hasn't been easy, but every struggle has shaped her into the woman she is today. Ngozi decides to visit Eziowelle once more, but this time, she goes not just as a daughter returning home, but as a successful author with a story to tell. The village has heard of her achievements, and they welcome her with open arms. Even those who once doubted her dreams now celebrate her success. As she walks through the familiar streets, Ngozi feels a sense of pride in her roots. Eziowelle may have once felt like a cage, but now it is a part of her story, a reminder of where she came from and how far she has come. Ngozi knows that her journey is far from over. She will continue to write, to tell stories that inspire others, and to fight for her destiny. But she also knows that life is not just about reaching the destination, it's about the journey itself. She has fought for her dreams and won, but she is ready for whatever challenges lie ahead. With her heart full of hope and determination, she takes a deep breath and steps into the next chapter of her life.
Thank you so much for watching The Fight for Freedom, Ngozi's journey to discover her true path. We hope Ngozi's story has touched your heart and inspired you to keep fighting for your dreams. If you enjoyed this story, please give it a thumbs up and share it with others who might need encouragement. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell, so you'll be the first to know when we release more powerful stories like this. Join us next week for another inspiring African tale. Remember, your journey is just as important as your destination.